Hi, Mike Ladd with you again for another edition of Poetica. Today we'll be hearing a selection of poems recorded for us at the 2010 Kritya International Festival of Poetry, Art and Culture, which was held in Mysore in southern India. The festival was directed by Dr. Rati Saxena, eminent Hindi poet, translator and Sanskrit scholar, who's also editor of the bilingual web journal for poetry www.kritya-2010, and that's KRITYA.IN, which publishes international poetry in both Hindi and English. The theme of Kritya 2010 was exile, trauma and survival, and the festival gathered together poets from around the world, from Costa Rica to Tibet, who each in their own way have experienced exile. The poetry of exile as a concept has been stretched to include voluntary and involuntary exile not only from one's land and life, but in emotional, spiritual and social contexts. Alicia Partnoy, Argentina.
It's very humbling to start this gathering of amazing poets, and thank you, Rati, for making this our home. We exiled people always yearn for homes. I went into exile with my daughter, who was 4 years old. My daughter, Ruti Sanabria, is now a poet, has published The Strange House Testifies, and this is a poem by her. Argentine Family Rejoices. Title and non-italized excerpts from the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, Sunday, December 23, 1979. The three met again in a leaping embrace shortly before 9 p.m. at a crowded National Airlines concourse. The solemn-faced, curly-headed little girl reached out small hands to clutch at her father as they swirled around together. We ran off that plane, fire chasing our bones. His wife was white of face after 26 hours in flight. Plink, plunk, plink, plunk, ribs and cheekbones, nose and elbows, plink, plunk, plink, plunk. Here she comes, a skeleton, plink, plunk, carrying her fat and rosy daughter, plink, plunk, plink. Earlier, Mr. S, carrying a bouquet of red and white carnations, had paced the concourse nervously, not certain his wife would be on the flight. These flowers are of significance to us in remembrance, he said in flowing Spanish. Red is significant, for it is the color of passion. The photo is the first of us as a reunited animal. How can I describe us? It is not obvious that his arm bone does not comfortably connect to her shoulder bone, that my thigh bones doubt her hip bones, and that her wrist bones wrestle a strange desire to strike anybody's head bone. A photographer hands me a toothpick with an American flag glued to it. My mother grabs my hand. Instinctively, a bulb explodes. The caption reads, "Flowers, a flag, and a loving touch." It was the first reunion for Mr. and Mrs. S. and their 4-year-old daughter since Argentine police arrested their parents at their home on January 12, 1977, and imprisoned them on unspecified charges. Mrs. S. commented that she had been kept in a 9-by-9-foot prison cell for almost 3 years, and thousands like her are still in prison in Argentina. Yesterday was the first time in 3 years I have been able to touch my daughter, she said. I vomited in the clouds above the ocean between Buenos Aires and New Orleans, vomited my grandmother's food upon my mother's lap. One stewardess gave me a hard American mint, red and white, to suck on, and pinned a pair of plastic wings to my chest, said it was the shock of clouds that had made me sick. My daughter, Ruth Sanabria, the next generation.
Tenzin Sundu, Tibet.
My problem is I'm born refugee. I did not escape from a country. I was already a refugee when I grew up. My parents came from Tibet after the Chinese occupation of Tibet. I was actually born on a roadside in Himachal, northern India. My parents were doing the road construction labor at the time. and they later got rehabilitated to South India. My father died when I was a baby. My mother lives in Kollegal refugee camp, which is about 6 hours from here. Karnataka received right from the beginning the first bulk of Tibetan refugees who resettled here. And I'm writing about just the birth, being refugee. Refugee. When I was born, my mother said, "You are a refugee. Our tent on the roadside smoked in the snow. On your forehead, between your eyebrows, there is an R embossed," my teacher said. I scratched and scrubbed on my forehead. I found a brush of red paint. I am born refugee. I have 3 tongues. The one that sings is my mother tongue. The R on my forehead between my English and Hindi, the Tibetan tongue reads Rangzin. Freedom means Rangzin.
Osvaldo Salma, Costa Rica.
Génesis. Al principio es por necesidad. Después no se sabe hacer otra cosa y neciamente lanza uno sus botellas de náufrago para que nadie las recicle entre la basura de las calles.
First, it's from need. Then nothing else will do. So you keep launching those message bottles that no one picks up from the street's junk and recycles. At times, I've wanted to be, say, a cabinet maker, build useful things, chairs, shelves, tables, coffins, beds, things one daily uses, shelves for trophies, for that encyclopedia bought on installments and those bound National Geographics, or those beds which are the centre of the world, where life begins and ends, or the tables where we eat hunger's bread, or those boxes which hold the dust that is going back to dust. But I'm no craftsman. I'm all thumbs. I like trees as they stand. My true passion is leisure. There I stalk the poem that relives, inspects, replaces life by that useless pretense of self-perpetuation that nestles in our self-oblivion. It's true. Only by merging with others' land and becoming clay of his clay may I be his voice. Only the word redeems me from the world.
Solo la palabra me redime del mundo.